What is up, guys? Happy Wednesday. Welcome to the Bearded Tog podcast. I'm your host, Adam Mason. I am a photographer raised by a single parent in a small town, kicked out of college, and now I run a thriving six-figure profitable business in a saturated market here in DC. And I want to show you and love on you and tell you how I do that as well so that you can do it. Like if I can do it. One of the ways we do that here at the Bearded Tog is through workshops. And we host monthly workshops every month. I mean, obviously they're monthly in our Facebook group, togfb.com, also called Fulfilled Photographers on Facebook. Would love to have you there if you're a new photographer, want to learn, if you're sick and tired of kind of like the weird marketing, Facebook groups or courses or Patreon or all that kind of stuff. And you're like, I just want an authentic place to really have a question answered where the host is actually in there all the time. That's it. That's where I'm at all the time. We host monthly workshops, as we mentioned. Lots of fun stuff. That's also where I pull a lot of the content for this podcast to help find guests and to help you guys because I want to help you. That's my number one goal. So really fun Facebook group. I would love for you to join. Today's episode is really special. One of my good friends, Paige Griffith, also known the Legal Paige, aka lawyer, former photographer, as I found out, also CEO, just bad mama jamma, if you will. Absolutely incredible lawyer, creative, helping out creatives with their contracts and legal issues. So really fun. We are overdue for an episode like this, and I'm so glad that Paige said yes to this. So really valuable episode, guys. If this is the kind of stuff that scares you or like, I'll get to that next year, now's the time, guys. Shore up your business. Be ready, right? Be ready to have your contract be set and awesome and ready to go. So we're going to talk about some of the misconceptions that photographers have and some of the things that we do wrong and COVID and everything in this episode. So without any further ado, here's the Legal Paige. Paige, this is probably one of the first episodes that I've interviewed somebody or talked to somebody, and I have no notes for this show, for this episode. I'm like, I think Paige and I could probably talk forever, and I'm just rolling with that. So welcome to the Bearded Tog. I'm excited to have you here, and yeah, this is going to be a fun one.
Thanks so much for having me, Adam. I'm excited too. I was looking through my email and was like, do I have an outline for this podcast episode? No, I do not. So yeah, you guys, this is totally like your flies on the wall, just chit chatting with Adam and I.
I love it. Well, people ask, oftentimes I'll email people like you and other photographers, or maybe they, are doing other things and they have like a person that's like, hey, do you have any questions? Or hey, like they usually like to know what they're walking into. And I definitely have some questions in my mind. I have this natural curiosity, but I was like, I want this to be a conversation. Like if Paige and I were at a conference, maybe I'm even an attendee of the conference. If I was like, hey, Paige, can we grab coffee real quick? I want it to be similar to that. At the same time, have it be valuable. And then I also just like, springing it on you. I also like kind of the fun, the natural conversation. So yeah, I'm glad that you were down either way.
Everybody gets candid Paige today. Lucky you guys listening in.
So I heard about you, I think a year ago or so, and was kind of like, following, and lots of people, I like will research people and look at things, and I'm like, okay, is this valuable for the podcast? Is this valuable now? Do I know what I would want to ask them or whatever? And it kind of like phased out of my brain, which happens every once in a while because I don't write things down and I need to. And then most recently, I feel like this year, I was like, oh, I was getting your Instagram ads, and I was like, oh, this is that Paige lady, and man, and then like kind of as you are discovering somebody, you just go deeper and deeper and deeper, like looking through everything, and then I was like, oh, Paige is like the new juggernaut of creative contracts now, and I was like, of course I need to have her on. So like, because there's other people like in the last 10 years, you think of like, oh yeah, there's this person, like, okay, but nobody I think does such a good job at what you do, at least my impression of what you do. And so I was like, yeah, Paige is what's up. So had to have you on. So for people who don't know, I look at you as a lawyer who creates resources for creatives, but fill in the gaps. Like, who are you? And I also read today that you used to be a photographer or used to be like in the wedding industry or something like that. So give me all the PG, pun intended, maybe PG in our history of you and your story and the Legal Paige.
I would love to. So I have a very kind of non-traditional way of getting into entrepreneurship because obviously I'm an attorney. And so I was in school for a very long time. And after college, I'm decently young for my age and like kind of what I do, because I was the youngest of my class, like growing up. So my birthday's in June. And then I was always like the last one to turn that age. So I graduated college at 21 and then I went straight into law school, and that's 3 years of law school. And so during that period of time, it's like, you're in your early 20s trying to figure out who the heck you are. And I had always had kind of this passion for just creating things. I mean, this is weird. Like we are so candid right now. I don't even have an outline, you guys. So I used to do theater growing up, performing arts. And I also really loved like arts and crafts and scrapbooking and things like that. And I don't know how both of those turned into photography, but I had a couple photographers here in Montana, Western Montana, that I had looked up to and aspired to kind of do something similar to what they do. And I don't know, I was just enthralled with their life, right? They were doing what they love and what they were passionate about and were showcasing all of those beautiful photos and videos to the world. And I was in awe of them. So I reached out to one of my good friends, Brian Powers. Shout out to Brian Powers. You guys, he's a phenomenal photographer in Western Montana. And I was like, hey, friend, we used to be neighbors back in the day because Montana is a small world. And I said, what camera should I get? I kind of just want to start. And so right before I went to law school, I got my first full frame. It was like a Canon 60 and, the nifty 50. He just told me the setup to get. And so I got it. And it really, I'm someone, if anyone knows me, that I go from about 0 to 180 as quick as I can. I'm a enneagram type 3, super goal oriented, all about achieving. And law school is all about reading and writing all day long. It is so hard. It was the hardest 3 years of my educational life. But with that came, what could I do for myself that I would enjoy each and every day aside from the law? And photography quickly became that. So by the end of my first year of law school, I had grown almost a 6-figure photography business, which is crazy to think about. Yeah. And then I just loved entrepreneurship and I loved creating, and I was able, I talk about theater because I think performing arts really helped me work one-on-one with clients a little bit differently than other people in my area. And I kind of found this niche. I call it fill the niche, or find the niche, fill the niche, kill the niche. And we kind of didn't have a light and airy, really colorful photographer in Montana at that time. It was very dark and moody, kind of orangey skin tones, that kind of thing, which is totally cool. I'm obsessed with it now. And so I did what I did best. And it was you guys, it was pink, bright pink, bubblegum pink, raspberry, and light blue, that kind of photographer. And I got really into it. And so, halfway through law school, I was like, wow, photography is my thing. I really, really love this. And I love entrepreneurship. And of course, I was in academia, had to do academia, always trying to be the best, top of my class. I'm going to wrap this up here quickly because I was still on the legal train that I couldn't get off of. They talk about it quite a bit in law school. And I actually got a very sought after federal clerkship. And you apply for those your second year of law school. And then I got it at the end of second year, but it's for after when you graduate. And it was 2 years, a 2-year clerkship. Oh, wow. So basically I had my next 3 years of life planned out, but I was still trying to build my photography business. And so I did that, and I did both side by side. I basically ran 2 full-time jobs. I was running around like a chicken with my head cut off, doing all the things, working late at night, hustling was the name of the game. And by the end of my clerkship, my judge sat down with me and he was like, Paige, I think you're going to do something different with your law degree than other people. And it was awesome to have this like almost 7-year-old judge sit down and just be like, it's okay to do a non-traditional path. And I see you forging forward and doing something totally different than what all my other law clerks have done. And that's when the Legal Paige started in 2018, if you can believe it. It literally started at the end of 2018. And this is where we are now.
That is insane how fast Legal Paige has grown. And like, I am so jealous, and that is insane because you're one of those people where I'm like, you mentioned you're like, hey, we're not going to do video today, are we? And I was like, yeah, it's not, we don't do video for public yet or anything like that. But you look amazing. You're like a perfect human being. All your reels, you like, you, at least on Instagram, it seems like you do the right thing on your content calendar. I'm like, oh, she's really put together. And then come to find out the Legal Paige is like 14 months old. Like, you're still measuring it in baby terms. Like, you're not using years yet. And
So
I just have to say, from the rest of our collective community, what the fuck, Paige? Like, that's insane.
Oh my gosh, that's what I tell myself every day when I wake up. Like, what WTF? What are you doing, Paige, with your life? Adam, I have a content manager that plans things out, and they tell me what to do. I have somewhat of a say in it because I do have some creative bones left in me, But
like a toe somewhere.
She tells me what to do. She plans it all out. So all those reels, you guys, batch record the reels. Do it.
That is incredible. That's awesome. So tell me, I have a stupid question. As somebody who lives in DC, when I hear, I didn't know this when I moved here, but obviously a city of lawyers, like probably the highest concentration of lawyers in at least in America, maybe the world. Also the city of intense, nerdy people, which now I can say that I'm one of, but like every single human being you meet probably knows a stupid amount about something in general. They're like, oh, would you like to talk about this for the next 17 years? Because I'm ready. But was your federal clerkship in Montana still, or did you come to DC?
Yeah, great question. No, it was actually in Montana. So there are 2 federal judges in Missoula where I live. There's only like 7 federal judges, 8 if there.
Oh, wow.
I think
Okay.
so 7 in the District of Montana. So each state federal law, this was a federal clerkship. So you guys, there's state clerkships as well. In state, there's different, if it's district level, appellate level, and then Supreme Court level in your state. Same goes for federal. So you have district courts, and then you have appellate courts, which are really weird in the US. There's like 12, 13, and then the Supreme Court, obviously, which lots of people know about. People only really think that is what matters, but it's not. Let's be real.
Yeah.
The district courts is where actually everything happens, and then people just appeal from there. So really what the district court decides is extremely important. And you're going through the whole trial process and all of the litigation. So I worked for a federal judge actually in my hometown, which there was 2 positions available for my whole law school. And I went to law school in Montana as well because I'm also an econ major, econ and poli-sci. And so economics wise, I was like trying to get the biggest bang for my buck. Yeah. And it was really cheap to go to law school in Montana because I still had in-state residency. I went to school, undergrad out in Seattle. And so when I came back, I got a scholarship, and this is weird to say, and I don't think I've ever said this on a podcast before. I think I paid like maybe $4,000 to $5,000 a year for law school.
Oh, that's sick. That's awesome.
Yeah, I'm all about the no debt life. I really strive for that. And it took me a while to get there after law school, but I'm finally there, which is nice. And I honestly, not having a $200,000 law school bill is really nice.
Yeah, no, totally. That's awesome. That's super cool. Tell me, so the Legal Paige, like, we know when it started, but like, how did that organically start? Or did you have a good ad strategy and you're like, okay, if I make these 5 contracts, like, because you were a photographer, you kind of knew what might be needed. Like, what was your mindset, beginning it, and what did it look like? And then like, if there was a difference, like maybe you just launched and it went well because you're you, like I talked about. I was like, oh, of course Paige would launch and it just, it magically works. When was the next thing that was like, oh, I leveled up, after that? So 2 kind of questions in there. Like, how did it start? Were you just like 1 contract a day, or was it like massive, or like, what did that look like?
No one's asked me this question before. So I actually need to go back to like 2017-ish. And that was the year that I was just like growing my photography business. I had an associate photographer.
Wow.
I was shooting like probably 300 sessions a year while working full time as a law clerk and doing like 20 to 30 weddings a year. I know I was a crazy person, but I was still young and I don't know. I just had a lot of time on my hands.
300 sessions.
I'm pretty positive. Like,
that is insane.
Because I was like the master of mini sessions in my hometown.
Yeah.
And so I count those as one session, even though they're 20 minutes. But
that's okay.
Yeah, I could talk all about mini sessions, you guys. But anyway, I digress. So in 2017, I was building my by that point, I was trying to scale my photography business. And that meant going to a bunch of conferences, doing online courses, and I started really seeing kind of the education industry of the wedding and event world, especially, and then, getting into outsourcing. And I was like, oh my gosh, there's so many other creatives. And then I started coming upon these creative lawyers. I was like, that's interesting. And really the catalyst, Adam, was I was in Jenna Kutcher's Mastermind in 2018. And some people know that, some people don't. But she has only ran one full year mastermind, and that was the year that she did it. And
that's awesome.
Yeah. So January 2018 is when I came up with the Legal Paige. We came up with the name sitting at a table at one of these mastermind retreats. I was in person with like 25 brilliant female minds that some of them had 7-figure plus businesses. And some of them were just starting out and trying to scale. And I was there as like a photographer, like, how do I scale my photography business? JK, I'm completely pivoting and going to build the Legal Paige. So I went home, trademarked the name, and started building a blog. And this is actually really important to it didn't happen quickly because I feel like I was blessed with some higher power was coming over me and saying, well, Paige, your legal ethics and responsibilities as a law clerk, I actually was prohibited from practicing law. And I couldn't have any income coming in from anything legal because of the federal clerkship that I was in. It's very, very particular and stringent, and they have very specific legal ethics. So sure. You can't, because it really has to be very neutral, neutral arbiter of the law is what they call judges. So that's what I had to be with the judge, because I was right underneath him, helping him with everything. And yeah, so I had a whole year, basically. My clerkship didn't end until the beginning of September. And I had that whole year to just build out blogs and work on contracts and kind of just think about what I wanted my business to look like. And it gave me also 9 months to really think about what I wanted to do after my clerkship. Did I want to step right into the Legal Paige? Did I want to go into kind of an associate role at a firm while still building the Legal Paige? And so, like I said, I feel very blessed to have been able to, I was given that time that a lot of people aren't given, right? They just want to start a business immediately. They want it to make profit. They need an income. I had another source of income. And so I was able to just kind of slowly build the Legal Paige. And I was in that mastermind, which was a brilliant time to build a business because I got all these ideas from all these other wonderful, phenomenal, business owners.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so then at the end of 2018 is kind of when I started building out contract templates and really getting into the industry and going to conferences as the Legal Paige and networking as the Legal Paige. And that took me about a year, honestly. I mean, even in 2019, last year, I was literally just speak at events, get in front of people, talk about the Legal Paige, network with larger people in the creative industry, affiliate with them, work with them. And then I guess my answer to this question now in November 2020 is March 2020 was a really trying time for the entire United States. And I think it was a sink or swim situation with lawyers. Everybody by March 17th, 2020 needed a lawyer. Everybody needed legal help all at the same time, especially people in the wedding and event industry, because we were rocked so hard with COVID and we had clients coming out of our ears with issues and everybody was rescheduling. Nobody knew it was happening right. Everybody went into lockdown for 6 to 8 weeks. And that was this period of time, Adam, that I didn't even really know in the like subconsciously I was doing things, but I was just doing things to help. And I feel like I just stepped up during that time and I worked 14, 16-hour days for 2 to 3 months straight. And I just helped. Everybody needed help. So I was helping as much as I could. Yeah. And that was like the 0 to 180. It was about 3 months and we built a team of like 10 people and now here we are.
Wow. Okay. So starting backwards, like before COVID, were you just a one-woman team?
Yeah. Kind of. This is where I could just go diving deep into building a team and scaling and helping with people. So, I was totally presented with like having an employee and then having turnover. And then I would like try to find a legal assistant and then I try to find a virtual assistant. And like, it was a hot freaking mess in 2019. Everyone, you guys, I have a podcast too. If you just go listen to my 2019 in review, you will get the whole spiel. I'm not going to say it here. It's one of our most listened to podcasts because I really just am upfront and honest and tell it how it is. Like last year was not the best year. I don't know if maybe that was why I was more well equipped for 2020. I was like, don't worry. Last year was bad. I got this year. And so I had, by the end of 2019, I had a legal assistant on board who was like kind of helping me, more like paralegal-esque. Wasn't a barred attorney, but she did go to law school and she is still on my team. Melissa, shout out to you, girl. She is phenomenal. And now she is going to take the bar. So I'm super excited to have another attorney on the team. And by that point, I had like 3 to 4 different virtual assistants. You know, you're just trying to outsource and like find help when you can. And
Did you have multiple at the same time?
What's that?
Did you have virtual assistants at the same time? Like in my mind, you just have one who like gives, but did you have 4 because maybe one was good at this thing? And like, is that how that worked?
Yeah. I mean, virtual assistants, and I would just plug them into where I wanted to delegate that task to.
That's cool.
So one of the biggest suggestions I can give to people when they're building their team is making sure that you're not finding the like rainbow person is what I call them, like jack of all trades. Yeah. Really, if you're going to scale very efficiently, everybody needs to have like their own bucket of tasks and you don't overlap the two. Yeah. And I've found that out in the past year. I mean, it's really taken me a while to do that. And I struggle with management every day. I try to be a good CEO, but that's hard. It's just hard. And I think people don't realize, they think like it's all fun and games when you have a team and you're making money and you're scaling and you're doing all these things. It's actually really challenging. I was probably spending 80-90% of my time managing and being CEO and like 10 to 20% actually being the Legal Paige and building out legal things and working with clients, so on and so forth. And that wasn't feasible. Like it wasn't scalable and it wasn't going to work for the long term. And so we just had to keep hiring on help so I could reduce that percentage of me managing my team. And now I'm probably about 40 to 50% management and the rest of the time building all of the legal stuff that we put out because I'm the attorney. I have to touch all of the legal stuff. Right. I'm the one that's barred and certified. So everything you guys see that comes out, I touch, which is a lot. So yeah. I would like to have like 5 more attorneys on my team, but yeah, that's kind of how it started. You know, I just had like one part-time person here and there.
That's awesome. That's so cool. Yeah, I think even that is fascinating. I think for people listening, like as you grow your team, because I think like, yeah, I always look for the rainbow person, right? I'm always like, okay, yeah, like I want one of me. And the reality is that, you know, you do not, you know, and if you can find somebody that's like, hey, I need you to do these 3 tasks, like you're going to be whatever the task is. It might be like, you're the events person. Okay. So manage my events. That's what I'm realizing more and more. Like we just started a little bit behind the scenes, but we have somebody who all she does is manage our email list because I suck at that. I'm just like, okay. And I'm like, I've listened to the podcast. I've, you know, watched the videos. I'm like, okay, yeah, I know what we should be doing, but I really need like somebody to hold my hand or somebody to be like, Adam, I need this copy right now. And all I have to do is like just email it to her. Like she can email me, hey, requesting for copy. I write a little bit and then like she does all the magic. And it's like all she does is promote our workshops. We do one workshop a month for free. And it's been kind of cool. And like, obviously you've probably seen this before I have, but like, she now, I'll mess up on something, right? That on something that's not in her task list. And then she's like, well, I could do that task too. And I'm like, well, yes, you can, like that's kind of how it grows too. Like there's like task creep or something, like job creep. So that's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong, you guys. You will always try to find that unicorn person or rainbow person that can do all of the things. I think I meant unicorn when I was talking about that to begin with.
I like unicorn and rainbow. Yeah,
rainbow's cool too. I love rainbows. You're going to try to find a virtual assistant who can kind of tap into all of the facets of your business, and that's fine. I'm just letting you know now from experience, it's not efficient. And so you will figure out in the long term that if you can delegate 5 hours here and 5 hours there and 5 hours there to somebody who is an expert at that, they will get things done so much quicker than someone who's in every single leg of your business because they're hopping around and there's all that time lag in between going from one to another of a task. And again, you always want to start out with that person, right? They say like start with a virtual assistant who's supporting your inbox and helping with random little tasks here and there, graphics, getting things going. But I'll end here with like, let me just list out what I have on my team so that you guys can kind of get a full picture of where I am now with like a 7-figure plus business. So I have a copywriter, I have a content manager, I have a digital marketing manager, I have a shop manager, an affiliate manager, I have a legal assistant, I have a legal intern, I have myself, I have a social media manager. I think I got everybody. But yeah, I mean, I have a video production manager. I mean, we have a lot of people. I can't do all the things. We all have the same hours in a day as Beyonce, you guys. That's my favorite quote of all times.
I love it. 168 hours in a week, everybody, guys. That is awesome. That's cool. One last VA question, just because this is just fascinating. Because I'm me. At what level, or maybe it's simpler than I think, like in a dream world, right? You don't have to tell all of them what to do or how to relate to each other. Like, do they know, hey, I'm not sending this to Paige, I'm sending this to the next person in line? Like, is that how that kind of works?
Now, yes. Before, no. So now we do have kind of standard operating procedures in place. You guys, it's okay if you don't have this when you first start out. Like that is just so far beyond the scope of like what you can actually do, right? You're still trying to just do what you're passionate about and serve your clients well and all of those things. So yeah, now we have kind of a hierarchical system of they will go to the next person in line. And so I'm just reviewing like the final products and adding in anything that needs to be added in or giving my suggestions. And then they go back to the drawing board. We just implemented Monday.com, if you've heard of it.
Yeah.
So I am like not a Trello person, not an Asana person. I have tried my whole freaking life to do that. And I just can't. It was like too much. My brain hurt looking at them. And I felt like I was spending more time trying to like organize everything and like all of the tasks than actually getting them done. And my digital marketing manager, this is my full-time employee who came on in September, actually implemented Monday. And it is a lifesaver, you guys. So it's expensive. I will say that. Like for new businesses starting out, I would definitely suggest go with the free option. But when you get to the point where you can kind of spend $50, $100 a month on like a really solid task management system, Monday is beautiful.
That's cool. That's really, really cool. Awesome. So switching gears a little bit, I promise I won't beg you or bug you about VAs and delegating and all that kind of stuff. I want to talk about the legal stuff. What can you tell me about, you can give me a COVID situation or just in general, where do you think photographers and creatives, wedding vendors, where do you think they're weakest legally? I know that's kind of general and things can change depending on, the country, the state or whatever, obviously jurisdiction and all that stuff. But like, what do you see based on that data, or what are vendors buying the most contract template wise that really indicates like, oh, there's a need here, or photographers are getting screwed on, or even we've talked about like the difference between a 50% deposit, and even if you write, you know, like this is a non-refundable deposit versus like a flat fee, you know, retainer or all that kind of stuff. What do you see that we just suck at? I always like asking people this, like, what are we awful at, and what do we need help with?
Oh, I'll try to put this gently.
No, don't be gentle, Paige. We want the real stuff, okay? We want the real.
Okay. You guys are getting the full-blown legal page here. So a few things. First and foremost is the main client service agreement, okay? Lots of people call it the MSA. I just call it your client agreement because that's what we all, many people listening in are probably service providers and are in the wedding and event industry. So you're not providing like tangible goods, you're providing services. And like Adam said, you probably have a contract, okay? So I always see that, like, mistake number one, if you don't have a contract, get one. Mistake number two, if you have a contract, you probably don't know what's in it. And that is the biggest, like, first mistake you're making as a business owner is you think just getting a template contract, like the ones we sell in the Legal Paige shop, is going to just save you, right? It's going to get you like 80, 90% of the way there. But if you don't know what's actually in your contract, how the heck are you ever going to like deal with any sticky situation that could come up with clients? So that's the biggest mistake I see is people don't just look through their contracts and then really tailor their contracts to the services they're providing as a business owner, because everyone does things differently with their own business practices. And so you may have to go back and tweak things. And like, you have to wear your chief legal officer hat. I call it the CLO hat. Like, we have to wear all the other hats in our business, and nobody puts this hat on because they're scared shitless to put this hat on. You guys, you can do it yourself. I promise you. You just have to take some time out of your day to really understand what your legal documents are saying. So that's kind of the first thing that I always see, because you want to be fully prepared, right? You want to be proactive rather than reacting to client situations. You want to be like, oh yeah, in clause 15, the second sentence, that's where I resolve this issue. You can go back to the contract. Your contract should speak for itself, but you need to understand everything that's in it. So please read through it, you guys, and add things. You can modify, you can amend, you can tweak things here and there. Like, don't change the actual legal language in it, but you can always do things according to, like I said, your specific business practices, and you want to make sure they're in there. So they're super clear and concise and understandable to your client as well. If you don't understand your contract, I will say your clients definitely don't understand your contract. And then Adam, kind of the other big mistake that I often see is people think that your main client service agreement is it. Like, you're fully covered legally if you have that. And I always tell people that is not true, you guys. If you need so many other legal things in your legal toolkit, is what I call it. Like, think about it as like, you know, you have a belt with tools on it and you have like your hammer, right? Which is like the most important tool in your tool belt. That's your client service agreement. But what about all these other tools that I have no idea? My husband knows what they are, but you probably are the same way. You don't know what they are. And so that is basically my whole job as the Legal Paige, is to be like, you're a small business owner. You have taken the leap to go from a passion or a hobby to a profit-making entity. And with that comes legal responsibilities that you take on, and you need to know what those are to help protect you. And Adam, that kind of goes into everything that you kind of prompted with this question, which is what happens in the face of COVID? What happens with reschedulings? What happens with force majeure? What happens when you bring on second shooters? What happens when you outsource and you start delegating and building your team? You need contracts for all of those situations.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think one, it's like taking that time out to just take a look at this and reevaluate, you know, even if it's like just a few hours a year, even non-COVID, you know, you could just have a good, like, take a look at it, like, be ready to update it, like, have a measure, take some Beyonce time out, if you will. No, like, that makes a lot of sense. I feel like, when I first started, I must have gotten lucky because, you know, there weren't a lot of like contract template people around, like 2009, 2010, at least that I knew of. And a buddy sent me his contract. He was a designer, so things looked a little bit different anyway, but the principles I think really helped me starting out, because it was like, hey, we agree to do this for this. This is how this works out. And then like even having like a deliverables section, which now would just be like where my package goes, you know, where all that kind of stuff goes. I'm like, oh, okay, this is like, what are we actually going to do? Like, we're setting the expectation, right? We're being proactive. That was really fascinating to me. And then like over time, I've helped out. And then like, I remember I finally, you know, made enough money to like do the right thing, and like called the local lawyer here in DC and was like, hey, can you work together on like really creating a contract that fits us and that has, you know, your approval, if you will, as like a local small business, you know, lawyer. And it was great. And I showed him like what we had already, and he was like, yeah, this is awful. And I was like, okay, which is probably how most lawyers react to other things. I feel like lawyers are like photographers in some way, where it'd be like, either I could do this or this is gross. You know?
Yeah. I mean, of course, a template contract is the best way to go in terms of getting one, not from a friend, but that's fine. If you I understand that's how the world turns, and people will do that. Totally okay if that's how you want to start your business, or downloading something free from Google. I would highly suggest you don't do that. And I would suggest you at least start out with a template contract from an attorney that is certified and knows what they're doing, and especially a contract attorney, and especially someone who knows the industry that you're in. I've even seen Adam once. Obviously, I tell people once you get a template contract, like just go get it, the checkmark approval from an attorney in your state, because contract laws sometimes are nuanced from state to state. Contract law is state-based, but general contract principles basically apply across the entire United States. However, I think people kind of forget that this is one of the things that I have an issue with in the industry a little bit, is photographers sell their contracts to like their students.
Oh, interesting.
And one, that's illegal. It's like the unauthorized practice of the law. They're not an attorney. Two, yeah. I also think that is a really bad way to go about it, because you're essentially thinking that they know everything about their contract and they're just giving it to you. That's like you getting it from Google, or you getting it from a friend, versus you getting it from somebody who knows the legal terms in it. Like, they're an expert at photography and educating you on photography. They are not an expert in the contract side of things. So just watch out for those. That's another kind of mistake that I think a lot of people don't really think about, right? Who are you getting your education from? You're going to go to the one that makes the most sense to you. You should do the exact same for legal stuff.
I love that. I actually forgot about that, because some of my mentees, you know, depending on where they're at in their business, if they're really new, you know, we'll do like a screen share, be like, hey, here's my contract. Luckily I know, we've been doing this long enough. I know why I have each section in there. I'm like, yeah, this is what these kind of do. And I kind of tell them, I say, I'm happy to like I would encourage you to, you know, even say, oh, I want these clauses, or I think those clauses sound good to me, but I'm like, you still need to do the work wherever you're at and like make sure that you have this. And it's okay to be like, hey, lawyer, local state lawyer, I really like this clause. Like, can we make something that this works? Like this works. But yeah, like you mentioned, like I have zero plans on selling my contract. Like, I'm a big specialist person. So like if you came to DC and you were looking for a certain kind of food and you're like, hey, like what's the best Thai, you know, in DC or whatever. And I'd be like, oh, I've got a place. Like, I want to go to the specialty, right? Versus like, oh yeah, we can just go to the grocery store and make
whip it up.
Yeah, make the microwave Thai. You know, so I think like people, but it's hard. You know, people get scared, but that makes perfect sense. And I think too, contracts, you know this more than anybody. Like, it's that thing that you need and hopefully never talk about, but then you'll know. Like, COVID was a good reminder for everybody, both legally, and then I know I've had a ton of people talk to me about like, Adam, I don't get that many leads, or I don't get enough clients to really like weather the storm financially. You know, like they're like, legally I'm okay, like all my clients are happy, whatever they've chosen to do, but they're like, we're gonna lose money. And I was like, oh yeah, like we're losing money too, but we're big enough and we get enough leads, and we had the business side covered to where we could kind of decide how we're going to play around. And yeah, like guys, the contract is that thing that like for the price of a template and a meeting with another lawyer, you're going to feel like an idiot the next time that somebody wants to push on, your contract and you go, oh crap, like I don't have anything in this for me, or even, like something, I'll give an example too. I think a lot of photographers don't think about. A few years ago, I had a unhappy client, probably like one of the few, like most photographers remember theirs. And they were unhappy with all the work. It was like very specific. And, I did my best to kind of help them along, your customer service can only go so far, right? Until you kind of have to be like, hey, the contract. And it went totally fine. And the issue got resolved and we figured it all out. But I ended up talking to my lawyer that year about that situation, kind of not even thinking about legal stuff or anything. And he said, hey, well, you should have I don't know the name of it. He said, you should have a clause that basically states that you guys will talk about it before they go online and give you a negative review or something like that, like something that requires them to, I forget the legal term. And that was fascinating to me. And I was like, oh, that sounds great. I would love to, have the most chance to fix it and to talk about it and all that kind of stuff. And that was really fascinating. And that was really, I think, super helpful for me. So I don't know what that means in lawyer terms, but that's like one of those things that people don't think about. It's not just getting paid. It's not just like, delivery time. It's not just, hey, these photos are copyright, or are mine or whatever like that. It's those little things, those little business things too, that I think a lot of photographers miss out on.
Yeah, that's probably an alternative dispute resolution clause or arbitration clause or something along those lines. Those like help you stay out of court before anything were to occur. And it's like you guys have to mutually like try to resolve the issue. Yeah. That can save you thousands of dollars before you actually get to court as well. Which is so nice because you're bleeding money by the time you start litigating. I mean, there's, I could go way far into the legal terms of contracts. You guys, I have podcast episodes on this if you want to binge watch like the most important clauses, but those ones at the end of your contract that you just think are like general provisions or miscellaneous, those are probably the most important in terms of if legal shit hits the fan. That is where you will go to, like a venue and jurisdiction clause. Make sure it's in your home state, your home county, an entire agreement clause, right? Everything's within the four corners of this document, and any outside conversations you had or emails or client calls that you maybe had sort of agreed to something, but it wasn't within the four corners of your document, then that isn't legally binding. Like, I don't know, severability clause, transfer clause, they can't just like transfer obligations to somebody without your approval. There's so many other clauses, counterparts and facsimile signature clause for one. You guys, if you don't have an electronic signature clause on your contract, get one, because I bet $1 million you're sending your contracts out online. So make sure you have those type of clauses. Those are those boilerplate language at the bottom. And then the ones Adam is talking about, we all know delivery of images, coverage clause, fees, rescheduling, cancellation, copyright, model release. All of those should be in like your photography agreements. If you're a photographer listening in here today, those are what you will probably be tweaking, right, as your business practices continue. And Adam, one last thing that I wanted to touch on, you were saying like I DIY kind of a contract audit every year. Yes, do it. Like, I don't know when this podcast episode is going to come out, but if it comes out before the end of the year, you guys, the end of the year, like December, moving into like the beginning of January, it's off season for a lot of people in our industry. Not for some in the South, but for many of us, it's off season. This is a great time before you move into a new year to reevaluate everything that's happened. Okay. So I call it a DIY contract audit. Do it. I always suggest, like Adam said, once a year. Twice a year would be great because I think you're going to forget about things after 6 months of like, oh, that client situation happened and now you've moved on to 10 other different clients. I would keep like a running tab, whether that's like a notes section on your smartphone or a Google Doc or, a board in Trello or Asana or whatever. And you could just brain dump in there like, hey, I need to tackle this with my contract, or like think about it legally when I decide to put on my CLO hat. And I always suggest the best time to do that's kind of the end of the year. So you're prepped and ready to go for new clients that book in the new year.
I love that. Yeah, this will definitely come out before the end of the year. Just for fun, anything else before the end of year that people should look at, legally? What's that look like? Also, too, you might be able to speak to this as well. Like, I think a year ago or 2 years ago, GDPR passed in Europe, and then the normal advice I got, at least, was like, hey, even if you're in America, you should have a privacy policy page, even if you don't necessarily link to it from the main menu. Like, so yeah, anything else that photographers can be looking out for, specifically like at the end of the year, check for these kinds of things.
Okay. Let's start with the former. So the checking on things at the end of the year, kind of doing your like legal to-do list to ensure that you're moving into 2020 on the right foot. We've all kind of got turned upside down this year. So let's turn you right back side up and make sure you guys are good to go.
Yeah.
I look at your business entity. I always suggest that. So people who are like sole proprietors or are just starting out, this is probably a good time to look into becoming a limited liability company. Depending on where you live, there will be a fee involved, of course, of registering your articles of organization with your state. And then you do have to pay an annual fee. But for most states, it's like the best insurance you can get for your business is what I call it, because you're completely putting your business entity in a different bubble than all of your personal assets. And usually people are commingling those when they first start out as entrepreneurs. Totally fine. I actually suggest people do that unless they're going to go, they're going to just start making hundreds of thousands of dollars in their first month. Oh, stop. I build an LLC before I do anything, but that's because I'm a lawyer. And then for people who are LLCs and are not S corporations, this year is kind of a funky year to be able to navigate those waters because all of our income is going to be so challenging to forecast for 2021. But I think for photographers, especially in wedding pros, you will be able to project that income that's going to come in 2021. And you guys be ready for a year, like one of your best years, right? Because everything got changed to next year. So this year might not have been the best for you, and that's okay. Some people did really well too. They were able to pivot and do all kinds of things, and like, power to you, friend. But don't just look at becoming an S corp from what happened in 2020. Because if that's the case, you're going to miss the mark, and it's due March 15th, usually March 16th ish. So 75 days after the first day of the year is when you have to file your S corporation status with the IRS. So you are still an LLC. I'm not going to get into this too much. I have podcast episodes on it, but you have to be a business entity, and that is a registered limited liability company or some type of company with your state. And then you designate for tax purposes as an S corporation. So you need to be both. That's really important. People just think, oh, I'm just an S corp. I'm like, well, I hope you're still an LLC. And you may need to do that for 2020, because if you don't do it at the beginning of the year, you've missed the boat for 2021. And if you make like 100,000, 150,000, you could be saving thousands in self-employment taxes for next year. And you can't go backwards. You can't do it. So that is the first thing that I would suggest. Look at business entities. I forgot the latter question.
All about GDPR and privacy policy.
Okay. So the second thing is like what I was talking about. Other things you need in your legal like tool belt would be website terms and conditions and a privacy policy. Yes, you need a privacy policy under US federal law as well. So if you are but it's only if you're taking people's email addresses and personal information. Here's the thing. People forget that if they have Google Analytics on, they're running Facebook ads. Even if you don't have a newsletter sign up, you're taking people's personal information. So you need to have a privacy policy on your website. Those are totally things you can get template-y from lawyers who have website terms and conditions and privacy policies. I would just double check your footer and make sure that you can click on your terms and conditions and click on your privacy policy. And if you have any type of like disclaimers, like for myself, I have a professional license. I need a disclaimer. For CPAs, they need a disclaimer. For like registered dietitians, nutritionists, or fitness people, they need, a little disclaimer on their website. All of those need to be in your footer, and they need to be separate pages so people can like easily click on them and identify them.
Oh, wow.
And then like what Adam said with the GDPR. Yeah, it's good. It's good to have things with the GDPR. within them in your privacy policy. And most template privacy policy conditions are going to come with GDPR language, usually near the bottom. Something that I just found out was the California Consumer Protection Act, CCPA, just had a little bit of a nuance to that law. So if you're in California in particular and you're listening in, you better have a privacy policy on your website, because California, you guys know, is like Silicon Valley. It's like the tech hub of the US. And so all the new privacy policy laws always come out of California. And then it's the trickle down effect for all other states to kind of start applying the model that they use. California just came out with an even more strict privacy policy law. It's called like the CPCA or something. I was like, of course you guys would make it the exact same, with like a couple letters changed.
Right.
But we will be, most lawyers right now, like myself, other creative attorneys online, we're updating our privacy policies to ensure that all of those comply with state laws as well. So most privacy policies that you'll get online, in a template version, you guys, you cannot write these yourself. I will just let you know that they're very, very legalese heavy. So just get one from an actual attorney, and also look for someone that's going to take these contracts to be living documents like the Legal Paige does. When I started out my contract shop, I knew I wanted to have future updates included in people's purchases, because I see, of course, contracts as living documents. Things need to be tweaked. Things need to be added. We've changed our template contracts, especially in the wedding industry world, heavily this year, probably 3 times. And so we send out massive updates when we decide to tweak things to our contracts to just, keep up with the times and what the wedding industry is doing and what's happening. Are there lawsuits occurring? How do we navigate that and mitigate that with contract language? So terms and conditions, like you said, and privacy policies is very important. Terms and conditions is like what's the user's, what does a user need to know when they land on your website?
Right.
That would include things like copyrights, trademarks. And then if you sell digital products, that's when you absolutely need to have terms and conditions on your website.
That's awesome. I appreciate that, because I was like, oh yeah, like all you need is privacy policy, but it's like, oh, terms and conditions also needed as well. So that's really cool. One last question for you that I think a lot of people who, if they've been living under a rock, maybe still have. How did people handle the rescheduling of weddings, canceling and rescheduling? And what was your advice for people? Like, what did you recommend, or what was the best legal way for them to be prepared?
Yes. I'm so glad you asked this question, because now we're in November 2020 when Adam and I are recording this podcast episode. And I have thought about this long and hard, basically the past couple of months, on what's happening. What are we projecting for the future? I mean, we're all trying to plan, but we can't really plan. And you're just trying to do your best in your due diligence with each and every one of your clients. So I just want to go back to like time periods of this year and what I suggested at different time periods, because Adam, this is really important based off of a clause that we just put out, because it changed. Like, we had to adapt. We had to change because the wedding industry decided to change its policies, which is A-okay and made sense financially and legally in terms of keeping themselves safe as business owners. So from about March to June and, middle of May, we were all dealing with, government shutdowns, stay-at-home orders. You couldn't do anything, right? And you were dealing with your existing contract, which was probably a hot mess. And our eyes were open to like why contracts are important. And you thought you were covered with that clause, but then you really had no idea what it even meant. And maybe you Googled it or you pieced it together on your own. And then unfortunately, you were having to just deal with what your existing contract said. And a lot of people were dealing with different contracts for different clients, depending on when they booked their services. So it got even more convoluted. So at that point in time, 1, everybody was dealing with rescheduling, and 2, some people were dealing with cancellations, because if you didn't have very concrete language in your contracts, oftentimes you were looking at a refund situation. And this was primarily due to force majeure clauses. As you all know, I've talked about them a lot. But at that point in time, like March through May 2020, it was impossible to perform, right? Nothing was open. You couldn't leave your house. They couldn't like host their event. So force majeure kicked in. And then the one thing that happened is people didn't have anything in their force majeure clauses related to what happens to fees paid. And that is where shit got rocked. So make sure you guys, you go back to your force majeure clause and you include language, and the Legal Paige has updated our force. I could do a whole class on force majeure clauses. I teach other attorneys, you guys, about force majeure because I know way too much about it at this point. I quickly, not slowly, became the expert on it because my whole industry was dealing with it all at once. And so make sure at the end of your force majeure clause, like you're listing out what a force majeure event is. Then you have like notice provisions in there of when people need to notify the other party of a force majeure event, so on and so forth. Make sure you're listing out epidemics and pandemics in those force majeure events, like specifically delineating those as force majeure events, because oftentimes they were not. People were like, oh, this is an act of God, but we don't have the word epidemic or pandemic like in our actual clause. Make sure you do that.
Wow.
But then at the end of that clause, have something related to fees. And usually for event industry pros, it's going to be along the lines of all fees paid up to the point of a force majeure event are non-refundable, but they will be transferable for a certain period of time, and like keeping those fees paid on as credit. This is what I was coaching people to do in the wedding industry during that period of time, even if they didn't have a concrete force majeure clause, because usually other clauses kind of made sense in terms of, well, there's the word non-refundable, like you talked about, Adam, non-refundable, non-transferable, but COVID. So clients wanted money back. And in those situations, usually you could like work with different clients. Okay. So you were using what's called a contract addendum if you were just changing like dates in your contract, but you wanted to keep your existing contract in place. That was like, I would say 5% of the wedding industry, because everybody hated their contract, or they finally, their eyes were open to, I have a shit ton of holes in my contract.
Yeah.
So then I was mostly suggesting to people that you use a rescheduling agreement, which basically is a superseding agreement to your existing contract, and it cancels and terminates, voids the existing agreement. It keeps all fees paid as credit. And then when your clients are ready to use that credit, you're going to sign a new contract. And this allows you time to update your contract, right? And then they sign a new one for the services, and you're just basically moving, if they paid their retainer or they paid fees above their retainer as well, all of that moves to like 2021, 2022
the
event
next
dates.
date. Yeah.
Yeah. Or there was a cancellation agreement, God forbid, if you had to go that route, like you need to terminate the original agreement and decide what everybody's doing with fees.
Yeah.
So that was that period of time. And then this summer, 2020, we had this situation of COVID clauses. So you were booking new clients, right? People were getting engaged. People were starting to plan weddings for 2021 that weren't having rescheduling situations. So these are new clients, new contracts. You're probably updating your contract, but you're like, my clients are asking for what happens in the event of COVID, right? If COVID doesn't go away, because we were all so unsure this summer of like where the end of 2020 was going to land. Right.
Yeah.
And so most people put in what's called a COVID-19 postponement and cancellation clause from about June, well, even May, April, right? New clients that were booking post COVID hitting the fan. Most clients were putting in most companies were putting in a COVID like kind of rescheduling cancellation clause that was an exception to the rule of their regular cancellation and rescheduling policies. That was like a pressure release valve is what I like to call it, where clients could be like, oh, I get one free complimentary reschedule in the event COVID does impact my event.
Right.
Okay. So that was kind of how things were. And now we're sitting at the end of 2020 and we're like, I can't feasibly, as a business owner, keep going like this, where I have these unending rescheduling situations that could occur next year. COVID is a known thing. the world is basically open now. There might be like random mandates and requirements put in place. I am going to put this out there. I don't foresee the US shutting down again unless it gets super, super bad. I know other countries have been shutting down a little bit. I just don't foresee that in the US. But even if it did, you need a different clause in your contract now. That's basically your clients acknowledge COVID-19. They understand the, issues presented with COVID-19, and they are willing to host their event no matter what regulations are put in place for like maximum number of people, or if they have to downsize their wedding, so on and so forth. And that you will legally perform as the service provider no matter what, unless you legally can't do so. Like your local and state governments say you cannot perform, or the venue is shut down because the state shut it down, kind of thing. Yeah. So that, and then it says there's no rescheduling allowed. And so your rescheduling clause would kick in, and usually people are now adding on rescheduling fees. So that, Adam, is how I foresee moving forward in this era of COVID is we're going to be booking, right? We're coming up on Christmas, New Year's time. Then people start planning their weddings at the beginning of 2021.
Yep.
And maybe they're booking for the end of 2021, or they're booking into 2022. Or I don't know, if people want to, some people have their weddings in 4 to 6 months. That's cool. So maybe they're booking for the summer. You cannot at this point be a successful wedding industry pro if you're just allowing so much flexibility to occur. Yeah. It was appropriate at the beginning of COVID. It's not now. Yeah. So you need to have concrete language that's consistent across the board with all of your clients, that they acknowledge COVID. They are booking you. They are planning their event. They need to stay on the wavelength of planning their event.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I love that. That's awesome. That was preachy Paige. I love that.
Sorry.
No. I'm here for it.
It was preachy Paige.
Yeah. So that specifically, one last quick question. Would that be, I'm just going to shout you out. Is there that clause, or would that be in your MSA template, or do you have a COVID template that people can purchase, and that particular information of acknowledging not just a force majeure, hurricane situation, but the ongoing pandemic you acknowledge?
Yeah, this is a great question as well. I just want to kind of clarify here, Adam. So a template contract, like our wedding photography template in the Legal Paige shop, is it's supposed to be forever. So that kind of template isn't going to have COVID language in it, because I want that contract to last forever. We have COVID clauses depending on how you run your business. So lots of people have our COVID-19 postponement and cancellation clause that they've used this whole year. Yeah. And now we have an acknowledgement of COVID and no rescheduling clause. You cannot have both in your contract. You need to choose how you want to run your business. And then you put either of those clauses in your contract. And then I just want to state here that force majeure may apply. And I'm not going to get into this because I could be preachy Paige again, but
I love it.
Force majeure, you guys, is kind of over. Any lawyer could argue that force majeure does not apply because COVID is a known thing. Yeah. It's not unforeseeable, and it's not unpredictable. Yeah. It may be impossible for us to perform, which is where lawyers are probably going to start arguing if something happens with a shutdown again. But I think I could always hang my hat as an attorney on, we all saw this coming. We could all see that either or could happen in the future with COVID. We don't really know. It's a virus, right? Cases are spiking right now, but the US is still pretty open. So again, I don't think force majeure is going to save you, is what I'm trying to tell everybody here. Don't hang your hat on force majeure. Totally. I need you to have other COVID clauses in your contract. And so just choose your own path there of whether you want to be a flexible wedding pro moving forward, and that's how you want to run your business. That's okay. Just be prepared that you're not really going to have consistent cash flow. You're letting clients just cancel willy-nilly based upon their fears of COVID or family issues. And that's fine. I understand that. And I mean, I was a bride to be this year and I had to completely reschedule my whole wedding. So I get that. But now's kind of the time where people know, like, this isn't, if you must live under a rock if you don't understand what's going on with COVID in the wedding world. So if you decide to plan a wedding and you decide to hire people for your wedding, you're basically taking on that risk yourself.
Totally.
So you shouldn't put that back on the businesses you're hiring.
I love that. Man, we could talk forever. Like now I'm like, I literally made a note for me to go check something and be like, all right, you need to talk to Paige about this another time. So I'm like, okay, yep, good to know. Man, that is so good. So good. I like want to keep going, but I know we have to be cautious of your time. Where can people go to find out more about this? What do you have going on the rest of the year that you're excited about? And thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, of course. So you guys, I'll give a discount code for Bearded Tog, and Adam can like put that in all of his show notes and do all the things. So you guys will get a discount code if you want to get anything from the Legal Paige shop. Those clauses are in there. Like I said, choose one or the other. I would suggest you go with the acknowledgement of COVID and no rescheduling clause at this point in time. Make sure you have a solid force majeure clause. And you can find everything at thelegalpaige.com. If you have any questions, you can contact me. I'm basically the Legal Paige everywhere. So all of the social media platforms, it's really not that hard to find me. But if you have like additional one-on-one questions, I can't answer those for you unless you're a client of mine because of legal ethics and responsibilities. So the best place to go, Adam, and I don't mean to like pitch this in a podcast episode, but it's just because I'm a lawyer and I don't really have another option for people, we have a Facebook group. You guys, it's a private Facebook group only for small business owners and primarily in the wedding and event industry world. And we talk about legal stuff all the time. And it's really become this safe space on the internet. I know Facebook groups are a lot and it's not fun to be a part of them. But if you have like a specific legal question as a small biz owner, go there. Just type in the Legal Paige community on Facebook and you answer a couple questions and we'll get you in there.
I love it. Awesome. Paige, thank you so much for coming on. That was incredible.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Guys, if you listen to this episode and immediately don't go to thelegalpaige.com, I'm just gonna, I don't know, I'm gonna freak out because you got to get your contracts, guys. You have to make sure that they're shored up. If you're not sure about your clauses, all that kind of stuff, this is the best place to start. You heard it here first. I would love to give you guys a 10% discount if you use my code TOG when you check out. So there's a link in the show notes. You can go to there, go to the Legal Paige, shop all your favorite contracts, and get 10% off on getting your business right, guys. It's going to be freaking awesome. All right. I use these contracts in my business as well. I just picked up a new one of the COVID ones that she recommended, and kind of customized it to my brand. It was really, really easy and really, really fun. So you got to make sure that your business is good to go. Don't be guessing. Don't take advice from other photographers, right? Like, I'm just telling you to take Paige's advice. Don't take mine. So absolutely go visit her, check it out, get a discount on some contracts, and get your business right for the next year. Okay? Awesome. Guys, do me a favor. If you haven't already, I would love for you to leave a 5-star review in Apple Podcasts for the show. It means a lot. It really helps the show. It'd absolutely be incredible. Secondly, come join our Facebook group, togfp.com. We do live monthly workshops. We go live talking about all kinds of fun stuff in there. It would be really great to have you. It's free, and it's really, really fun. So I would encourage you to go there, meet other photographers just like you who are on the same journey as you guys, and really, really fun. Lastly, if you want to get in touch with me, talk to me, suggest a guest, be my guest, Beauty and the Beast, hit me up on Instagram at Mason Photography. Would love to talk to you there. Always love making new friends and saying funny stuff in the DMs and in the comments. So come say hi over on Instagram. Link is in the show notes. Have a wonderful day, guys. Keep being awesome.